let's beat the dead horse a little bit. So the 12 volt Gen 1, Gen 2, someone made a suggestion in Twitter because I put out some tweets about some pin issues I found with some of our cables. We'll refer to 12 volt high power as Gen 1. We'll refer to 12 volt 2x6 or H++ as Gen 2, okay? That's what we'll call them from now on. I put these tweets up just a little bit ago actually, where I noticed, so I with all of the discussion with DerBauer and his cables, like having a couple of hot wires with 23 amps going through them. Obviously that's what happened to the guy that has the melted FE based on just evidence that you can see. I decided to start checking our cables, and in the process I found something interesting. That's totally speculation, but I'm putting it out there because I want the real experts, the ones who are truly capable of assessing this sort of stuff, to kind of look at their stuff and chime in and see if maybe this is just another clue in the 5,000 piece puzzle everyone's trying to put together into how to protect their crap. For those looking for a high-end custom gaming experience, look no further than Falcon Northwest. Falcon Northwest has been building PCs made for gamers for over 30 years with a focus on a true high-end gaming experience. Custom cases available only through Falcon Northwest feature state-of-the-art testing and design to ensure that every component is performing at their best through thermal imaging and rigorous lab testing designed and overseen by the Falcon Northwest founder himself. With a complete lineup of systems ranging from small to large, every Falcon Northwest system includes a 3-year warranty policy and a year of 2-way overnight shipping coverage, providing the ultimate peace of mind. To see all that Falcon Northwest has to offer, follow the sponsored link in the description below. I mean, it was one thing to try and protect your $1,600 plus 4090. It's another thing to protect your $3,000 plus 5090. Also too, if you're just really sick of this subject, I get it, trust me. This isn't one of those like, oh, YouTubers found a content like topic that everyone is just watching, so they're like beating it into the ground. No, we are genuinely curious to try and figure out what's going on here. There's a lot of things that have been figured out, but like I was starting to say, if you're sick of this subject, don't worry. I have a really cool case mod build that I did for my daughter. I finally finished that. I'm calling it Project Tranquil, and it should be Tranquilizer at this point. Just let me go to sleep for a month. Anyway, that's gonna be coming up next after this video. So trust me, you'll get some reprieve from all of this. Reprieve? Whatever, yeah. And then I will recuse myself from the discussion here for a bit and let the professionals take over. But here's what we know so far. If you watched the DerBauer video and you've watched Buildzoid's video, the issue truly, as much as NVIDIA will not admit this, truly boils down to the power delivery system, specifically on the 5090 and the 4090, being dumbed down. And I am super paraphrasing Buildzoid's video. It is definitely worth a watch. Buildzoid is a engineer. He looks at the PCBs. He's able to really dissect things when it comes down to a circuit trace level and really be able to sort of educate you guys on why designs are the way they are or why they should be different than the way they are. Specifically, in this case, 4090 and 5090. But in a very high level, paraphrasing of Buildzoid's video, the reason why the 3090 Ti never melted is the fact that it has a 3-rail system for the power delivery. The split of the power amongst those rails was almost like load balancing in the card. From 40 series and beyond, NVIDIA went to a unified rail system, which means the GPU and the memory and the VRMs are all pulling power from the same bus, if you will, the same power bus. So there's no smarts. They got dumber, if you will. The irony that these cards start moving towards AI, but they got stupider along the way. PCI SIG also created confusion and leeway in the plug design, which is what we're gonna kind of talk about here today, that has exacerbated the problem. So what I'm gonna do today is, this is kind of coming across the perspective of it's user error, you didn't plug the cable in all the way, which is why ones like this exist from MSI where they're yellow, so that you can see, when it's fully seated, you can't see any of that yellow. It is completely like obscured. If you start to notice any of the yellow showing, maybe you cable managed and you yanked on it or something, you would see some of the yellow that can give you an idea that, hey, it is slightly pulled out, which means you could have a pin not making good connection, and that would increase the amps and the resistance on one of the wires, which could lead to the melting issues that we've seen. Now we need to talk about why situations potentially exist when it comes like to DerBauer's situation, where 1 or 2 of the wires is pulling 23 amps or up, 22 amps, 23 amps, and some of the wires next to it are pulling like nothing. Because I'm pretty sure we can all agree DerBauer knows how to plug in a cable. I hope we can all agree on that. If we can't agree on that, well then we can't be friends and you didn't want to be to begin with and I really don't care. DerBauer knows how to plug in a cable. I know how to plug in a cable. Most people know how to plug in a cable. Yes, there's situations where you can loosen it by, usually that's under cable management situation, where you're yanking on wires to zip tie them and you might pull it just slightly. Now, before I show you what we found here, and I know you guys are like, Jay, just shut the f up and show us what you think you know. I don't know anything, this is all speculation, but I'm hoping those that know can look into this. GN showed that if the cable is, and this is going back to 40 series guys, 2022, early 23, if the cable is ever so slightly askew, like we're talking you can fit a razor blade level of gap on one side, could cause problems. What we found is there is significant inconsistencies in the pin depth across our cables. So what I want to do right now, I think I want to go over to the microscope and show you guys what I mean, because I think I'm very, very lucky in this instance where if the pins that are not seating correctly are on the 12-volt side, I think the problem can appear quicker than if it's the ground side that's not seated. And my only speculation on that is because all the photos that show melted cables show they're melted most along the side that have the sense plug, because that's the 12-volt side, the other side is the ground. I have a couple pins here that are very recessed. Like I'm wondering what kind of contact they were actually making. They were on the ground side. So I'm wondering if they were on the 12-volt side, if I might have already experienced a failure. This is where I need an expert to tell us. Phil and I have sort of been debating. We're not sure if a bad ground connection would have the same result as a bad 12-volt section. Now we know power in, power out. That's how direct current works, right? So I don't know if the power exiting would be the same resistance as the power entering. So somebody please sound off. We're gonna go over to the microscope here and I'm gonna show you. The reason why I'm showing you this is it gives you time potentially, if your cable falls under these conditions, to replace it and what to look for in your cable to potentially hope that you don't have an issue, because I'm gonna show you right now. You could have the cable fully seated and have pins not making proper contact. Okay, so this is the MSI ATX 3.1 cable. I wanna point out how to identify which cable you have. So you can see right there on the side of the cable, it says H++. It could say H, it could say H+, but only H++ is the 3.1. Now let's pay attention to the pins here real quick. As I rotate this, you can see all the pins look pretty uniform. Some might disappear faster than others because they're all gonna have a little bit, and it's a little out of focus here. They're all gonna have a little bit of variance in their height, but for the most part, you can see they're all pretty even. What I mean by even is the depth between the end of the plug, right? Because that's where it's gonna seat against the other end of, or the female end of the connector. And then there's the pin distance to the end of the plug here. So as I tilt it, you'll see the pins disappear because they're slightly recessed. So this is pretty good. This is actually really good. Like MSI's cable right here is very high quality in my opinion. Let me show you a bad cable. This one uses two 8-pin PCI Express. So all the Corsair power supplies, even the ATX 5.1 3.1s and the 5.0 3.0s use a 12-volt high power to two 8-pin cables. This is what our Corsair cable looks like. And it's a little concerning because I want you to notice, do you see that back corner pin? Like in the far distance right there? That's on our ground side. Do you see how recessed that is? Look how far I have to tilt this before you can come into view. I am fairly certain between the end of that pin and the end of that connector is out of spec. I am fairly certain of it. I can also say this one right here is looking pretty low. Now I want to point something out. This cable has been plugged in one time. One time. We built the test rigs. You guys remember those videos. I plugged in our cables and look how deep that is. That is nuts right there. And it was plugged into the PMD2 device, and then we've been using a cable out of the PMD2 going to the graphics card. So I have a theory my PMD2 was actually solving this problem for us and maybe unifying the ground and fixing it for us as it goes through its circuitry back out to the GPU. So the next testing I'm gonna do is actually this cable direct to GPU and start monitoring the amps on the cables. That's why I was saying, I need you guys to tell me, those that are in the know, on whether or not the ground, like that pin looks like it could almost be like, it's gone right there. Like look how recessed it is, that's nuts. Anyway, I don't know if the ground not being seated would be as bad as the 12-volt having high resistance through it from not being seated. So please sound off, because remember, these 6 next to the sense wire are the 12-volt. So this brings up the discussion, like, I know for a fact this thing was fully seated. I installed it myself, but as you can see, it pushed back. Now there's something else I want to show you here, and this is going to be kind of hard. I wanted to use the vise, but it's going to be very difficult here. Look at that. Do you see how that almost looks like an entire pin is missing? Now what if that were on the 12-volt side? Guaranteed failure incoming on that. You see those peaks and valleys on the Corsair side and how uniform they are on the MSI side? That's what we want on the yellow cable, not, and again, that corner cable, look at that, still gone, still gone, still gone. There it is. I was like, where the hell did it go? Did it come out? Look at that. If I grab an individual wire here and I try and wiggle it in and out, there's no movement. You don't see the pin. I'm doing this one right here, the one closest to the bottom right here on the right. So I'm trying to do this so I'm not wiggling it, but that's really hard. It is not moving in and out at all as I wiggle it. Here is the Corsair cable.
Oh, wow. I didn't think it would be that obvious, jeez.
Yeah. Now here's the thing. Not all of them do that. So here's the one below it right here. See, no movement, but the one above it. See that? So you push this into your power supply and you seat the cable all the way, and then the pin pushes back. That's not user error. That's design flaw. Whether it's the barbs in this pin are too weak or something, I'm going to barely pull on it. Yoink. I barely touched it.
Jeez.
So what do you think's happening when you plug that into your graphics card? Now I want Phil to put on screen right now images of some of the failed connectors. Ones people caught early, they're almost always the end cable. They're almost always the end pin. So I don't know if this is a Corsair problem. It could be the source of wherever they're getting this particular plug from. This is the first Gen 1, as you can see. It doesn't say H++ anywhere on it. Now I do have one here that has never been used. This one is the H++. There it is, you can see it right there. This one is H++. It comes from their revised, so Gen 2 cable on their newer power supplies. Out of the box, the pins have inconsistencies on their height. By contrast, so this is my like $15 Amazon special. I needed a longer cable, right? It's pretty long. I need a longer one for the PMD2. So here is one end. Very consistent. Look at that. Anyway, here's the other end. Look at that. Shall we put this into contrast? That right pin, man, look at that. Look at that. All of them have disappeared except for what? One on the bottom left and like a sliver of 3 others. You can still see all the pins on the Faz gear, but they're all gone on the Corsair. Look at that. I don't know what the spec is between pin end to connector end. That can't be good. That means we are having less contact between the pin and the receptacle on this end on our GPU, which could lead to obvious issues. And then that ground can obviously not be a good thing. Okay, some other brands to talk about here. This is an InWin PCIe 3.0 5.0, so this is 12-volt high power. I mean, this looks pretty good to me. In fact, the cable looks the nicest out of all of them. They don't have the scratches all over them, although the other one's been cycled a bunch, right? This is the Singularity Computer power board one. It's been plugged in once on either end. I never ended up using it. I'm wondering, again, if this is just a clue. I'm not saying this is the problem. I'm saying this might be a clue as to how something could be fully seated and something could melt. By contrast, let's look at the ones that are included with the card. That is pretty good.
Wow.
I hate that my real recommendation might be only use the adapter that comes. We'll talk about third-party cables and what that actually means in a sec, but look at that. Like, I actually really do like this adapter from NVIDIA. It's very high quality. Like, I would feel if you have concerns, just use this. This is the 5080, which has 3. Yeah, look at that. NVIDIA versus Corsair.
Oh, Jesus. The Corsair just looks like crackhead teeth now.
I'm from Victorville. So I'm just feeling like this is a clue. This is a bigger clue or puzzle piece in the, like I said, 5,000 piece expert puzzle everyone's working on. Let's talk about, though, third party versus first party cables. The other argument that people are throwing around out there is third party cable, not supported, not supported. That's actually not true. There's a difference, though, between certified ATX 12 volt cables and non-certified. I'm fairly certain my Faz Gear is not a certified cable, but I just showed you pin-wise how good it actually is, and it's probably the cheapest cable on the table right here. And it's fairly long, which is what I needed. Technically, these are the first party cables, but as I already said, these are not sent with the graphics card to say, only use these cables. If that were true, NVIDIA needs to make that explicitly clear. If you plug anything into your graphics card other than these, then it's not warranted. But that's not the case. This is just an adapter for those that may not be running a new enough power supply that has a 12 volt plug, Gen 1 or Gen 2 natively with their power supply to have an option to plug into it. Corsair took the approach of, let's support 12 volt high power, but let's only support it on one end, and let's use what, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, on the other end in the power supply. And I'm okay with that as well, except for the quality of their GPU end is sus. This is not in this, as you saw, if we were talking specifically pin depth and contact surface area, this is not great. The point being, all of these cables by definition are third party because they're not supplied by NVIDIA. So then what? I do, as much as it is not pretty, have a recommendation at this point. This cable that came with the graphics cards is so much better than the one that came with the 40 series cards and even the 30 series cards. If you're worried, I would highly recommend you use the adapter. Because even if you have a PCI Express 5.0 or 5.1 power supply, you still are gonna have regular PCI Express cables too. And then you'll have lots of connection points, but those are connection points that are much more robust just in terms of their girth, if you will, their size. And this is probably still the beefiest 12 volt high power end I've seen yet. I could have unclipped this and cut this off and really taken a look inside. There's no point. I showed you how well the pins and stuff are. And that's only my recommendation of if you're concerned. But I think cable manufacturers, like specifically power supply companies, wherever they're sourcing their cables from, I bet you anything, because if we look at the sleeving on this guy right here versus the sleeving on the, and the cable connectors and such that come with the power board, that's Singularity Computers out of Australia. And then there's another one, Silverstone, I don't have it out. Silverstone cables also look and feel exactly like this. I would not be surprised if they're getting sourced from the same factory. We know how ODM and OEM works. There is a handful of factories in China making all this stuff and supplying it to their customers. Their customers being the electronics companies making power supplies. So technically there's not much of a difference between third party and aftermarket, first party, et cetera, et cetera. It brings in a very thick, murky conversation regarding cables. But the point of today's video is to just stop screaming and parroting the GN video from 3 years ago stating it's not plugged in all the way, bro. Because I am fairly certain was what we just showed with the pins, that is a bigger discussion. What I am going to do right now, before we end this video, and there'll be a jump cut till we get there, is I am going to now take my 12 volt high power cable from our Intel test bench here. I am going to plug it back into the power supply, and I am going to plug this directly into my graphics card, not through the PMD2. This one has only ever made it through the PMD2, and I do truly believe my PMD2 might have been conditioning the power that's coming in on this end gross back to something clean and even coming out of its pinnage, if you will. And Elmore Labs, I don't know if your name's actually Elmore. If you're watching, maybe PMD3 idea, maybe have some sort of amp sense on each wire now coming out of it, so you can catch that in the hardware, because you're already doing amp for the entire thing. Can you now maybe do it per wire? I don't know, maybe an opportunity there for, I think every lab in existence would probably appreciate to have that and not have to deal with a clamp meter on every wire. You can watch them all at the same time. You can have that idea for free. You're probably already working on it because you're a very smart guy. Anyway, let's plug this into my 5090. I'm gonna throw the Zotac card on there because we know that sucker pulls more than 600 watts. Let's see if any of my cables start to warm up, because you've already seen, like I can see it right now actually, this corner cable right here on my 12 volt is bad. No, I don't mean bad, but it's very recessed. So let's see if maybe the PMD2, maybe that's why it was screaming at us. Okay, so this is our thermal right now on the 12 volt side. You can see that they're all warm. Actually, a couple don't even look that warm. There's two that are very, very warm. As you can see right there, this is a Zotac card, not even the FE. So they all are generating some heat, except for some look very, very, very light in terms of the temperatures. That's warm, that's warm. Oops, don't show the GPU. There we go. Look at those cables right there. So let's now check the amps. They should be 9 or less across the board, but they should all be as even as possible near each other. So the very far left, 12 volt. 7.8, 7.9, 8, okay, not terrible. 6.2, 12.1, 10.5, 7.9, 10.7.
So not as bad as DerBauer's, but still pretty inconsistent.
So this is not a video to say, oh, we found the problem, but it's just another thing that can create the dynamic for the perfect storm to happen. You know what I can do real quick too? I can plug it back into our PMD2 and measure again and see if the PMD2 really was smoothing out the power. So now we're going out of power supply into the PMD2, that's that cable we just had. Now we're coming out of the PMD into the GPU. So let's check the amps again. 9.7, 8.9, 8.9, 9.5, 9.1, 8.0. The PMD was smoothing out the power, just like I suspected. Now let's check this end. 11.1, 10.5, 11.3, 6.4, 5.6, 10.5. The PMD2 literally was saving the card. I think this means something. That's what I have to present. The experts, take it from here, please.